Welcome back to Put the Metal On. I'm Dave Cullen. We're back again for another metal music review. Today we're going to be talking about the 10th studio album from All That Remains in Antifragile, which was released on January 31st of this year, which marks a very significant chapter in the band's evolution. This band introduces new members, Jason Richardson on lead guitar and Anthony Barone on drums, following the tragic passing of founding guitarist Ollie Herbert in 2018 and the departure of longtime drummer Jason Costa in 2023. Now, before we get to all the details about the record, let's of course talk about the lead up to this record for All That Remains. So originally All That Remains started as a side project set up by Phil Labonte after his stint with Shadow Falls. Their debut, Behind Silence and Solitude, was a generic metalcore record that not many people really cared about, to be honest. It sounded like every other melodic death metalcore act trying to ride behind the In Flame coattails at the time, just with less personality in this case. But then came the records This Darkened Heart and The Fall of Ideals that really put them on the map. You could argue that The Fall of Ideals is the crown jewel of their career so far. Tight riffs, memorable breakdowns, and a perfect balance between aggression and melody. Labonte's vocals in particular were surprisingly versatile, and it seemed like the band really had passion behind that record. This album, you could argue though, remains the one thing that fans cling on to defend the band's relevance. And bear in mind that album was 20 years ago. With their records Overcome and For We Are Many, it seemed like they were taking the inevitable plunge towards radio-friendly metalcore. It seemed like they traded innovation for accessibility. The breakdowns got simpler, the choruses became more generic, and Labonte seemed to be more interested in feuding with people on Twitter as opposed to writing decent lyrics. For example, Overcome became a very watered-down version of The Fall of Ideals. 2 Weeks became a radio hit, but it sounded more like Breaking Benjamin with a few chugs thrown in, if you like. For We Are Many was slightly better, but it just simply rehashed old ideas. And at this point it became clear that All That Remains were content to ride the metalcore rave while adding zero new elements to it, unfortunately. By the time The Order of Things came out, that was a real breaking point for the bands with their long-term fans. They tried to reinvent themselves as more like a hard rock metal hybrids, presumably to chase success of bands such as Five Finger Death Punch. The result produced songs such as This'll Probably Not End Well, which I have to admit sounds quite ironic. And then came their record Madness in 2017, which you could argue was the low point of their career. Very uninspiring drums, very cringe-induced lyrics, and that cover of the Thunder Rolls that was not the most accepted cover really signified where they were at. It was arguably a very desperate attempt to appeal to the masses, and it alienated probably any metalcore fan base that they had at that point. Now, unfortunately, tragedy hit the band in 2018 with the death of Ollie Herbert. The loss was not just personal, but it was also a creative loss for the band too. Herbert's riffs were probably the last shred of identity that the band had at the time, and without him, the band were quickly turning into a nostalgia act. Their record Victim of the New Disease was supposed to be a return to form, but it felt like a hastily assembled apology to fans. Sure, the aggression was back, but the songs lacked that cohesion without Herbert. Since then, they have just basically done anniversary tours on The Fall of Ideals. It was like they knew they'd never top it, so why try? All That Remains are one of these bands that had terrific potential back in the day, but I feel it's been squandered by their online activity more than redefining the genre. Therefore, one could look at Antifragile as an opportunity for re-innovation. Given the history of the band's regression though, no one's expecting anything groundbreaking. But that said, let's find out. Let's first talk about the record's overall composition and cohesion. So let's just get right to it. The album feels very disjointed. The transitions between the aggressive, very riff-heavy tracks and the softer radio-friendly ballads just feels jarring. It's like they don't know how to cater between the metalcore fans and mainstream appeal. And I hate to say it, they ended up half-assing both. There is variety in their songs, there's no question about that, but it's almost at the expense of consistency as a result. The album goes from breakdown-laden deathcore-influenced riffs to melodic ballads that feel like leftover scraps from The Fall of Ideals. The result, it feels like a Frankenstein's monster of ideas with little cohesion in the end. I really don't like the transitions for this record. It feels like the tonal shifts are very disruptive. It's like they stop straight away, and as a result, the album feels like a playlist to me. And even though the record is 43 minutes, which is a good length of time for most records, it feels so much longer because of how the formula is for a lot of the tracks. It's like they follow the templates. Start with a chuggy riff, sparkle in some generic clean sung chorus, then throw in a solo that exists more to show off than serve the actual song. It seems like a lot of their structure has been more problematic than anything else. Which brings us to the songwriting and arrangement of the records. Now, there is some good tracks there. Their track Divine, for example, has moments of catchiness, but most of the choruses feel like replaced versions of their 2006 material. It's actually almost a talent in itself, you could argue, that so many of their riffs, while there's clear technical ability behind them, they're still very forgetful. Jason Richardson, coming into the band, brings a very undeniable technical prowess, but the songwriting still feels mechanical. Unfortunately, complexity for complexity's sake doesn't equal good songwriting, period. And as a result, a lot of these songs feel like extended warm-up exercises with just vocals put on them. In terms of emotional impact, though, they do try to convey a range of emotions, from aggression in tracks like Poison It, or introspective ballads like Let You Go, but they come off as so hollow. The emotional weight they try to aim never lands because the lyrics are both generic and delivery feels phoned in. The lyrics talking about resilience, strengths, concepts that could resonate if the lyrics weren't lifted from an emotional Instagram page. Labonte has definitely written about it, and if anything, I hate to say this, but it feels like he's just written the first draft and just went with that. Moving on, the performance and musicianship. Hopefully this is better. It is. I mean, it's technically proficient, but it lacks soul. Richardson is undeniably a beast on guitar and is a fantastic addition to the band, but his shredding also feels self-indulgent rather than purposeful. And the rhythm section, my god, I can't hear the bass. It's completely absent in the mix, and the drumming, whilst precise, it feels too straightforward, almost like it's on autopilot. It's like the band are trying to still prove that they have the technical prowess instead of creating very memorable songs. It's basically metalcore cosplay at best, to say the least. Labonte's harsh vocals still have bite, but his clean vocals, meanwhile, seem increasingly forced and over-processed. It almost feels like his attempts to convey vulnerability comes across as if he's reading off a script. The drums are technically very tight, as I mentioned, but they're programmed to sound mechanical, and as I mentioned, the bass might as well not exist. It's like the rhythm section are simply there with the sole purpose to support the guitars and nothing else. And for me, that's unacceptable. Which brings us on to the production and sound quality. The production sounds too polished. The guitars sound sharp, sure, but the drums sound plastic and the vocals are way too prominent in the mix. It's a clean production job, but it just sounds so clean that it robs the record of any grit, rawness, and authenticity for me. As I said, the guitars give a good, decent modern crunch, and it's suitable for the genre, but it lacks that character. And as I mentioned before, the Ghost is a bass, which is one of my pet hates. It's there, but you can't feel it. As I mentioned, the drums, punchy, but artificial, if you ask me. It's almost like they punched it into a drum machine, maxed out the triggers, and that was it. As I said, Labonte's vocals were overly processed. His clean vocals were polished to the point where it almost sounded robotic. And while his grounds were still powerful, they came across as if they were disconnected from the music altogether. It seemed like the band were almost too concerned with the guitar sounds, more than anything else. And it shows. The album did employ some atmospheric elements here and there, focusing more on traditional instrumentship. It was minimal, but not really effective though. It seemed like they were just there, like afterthoughts, as opposed to deliberate artistic choices. God, I feel like I'm slating them today, but with that being said, let's talk about the creativity and originality of the records. They do try to revisit their metalcore roots here, while incorporating modern elements. But it still sounds like they're desperately clinging on past glory while shoehorning on modern deathcore tropes to stay relevant, but unfortunately it fails at both. It is very obvious, particularly after discovering that they're doing anniversary tour on the Fall of Ideals, that they're obviously trying to recapture that magic while still hopping on the deathcore dreads train. As a result, they've created a record here that I find very uninspiring. It's basically gone back to what they did before, rather than trying to create something new. And their attempts to blend deathcore with metalcore, I don't think is either innovative nor convincing. It's like they're not even trying to push the boundaries, they're just dabbling in. So it's like they're putting their toe into the pool rather than diving headfirst. And this brings us on finally to the replay value and impact of this record. After 2 or 3 listens of this record, it simply just becomes background noise to me. There's no real reason to listen to this record unless you're a diehard fan. There's some good songs like Antifragile and Divine are good, but again, they feel like lesser versions of their past glories. There's very little impact for this record for me. I mean, long-term fans might still check it out, but it isn't poised to leave a mark on the metalcore scene at all. Unfortunately, it's more likely to serve as a reminder that all that remains, best days are long behind them. Unless they prove us all wrong. But I can't see it. And that brings us to our conclusion for this. Very harsh, I have to say, but I have to be honest, that Antifragile is a record that shows that all that remains are basically stuck between who they used to be and who they think they should become. Don't get me wrong, technically very good, but creatively uninspiring. And as a result, it leaves listeners with a collection of songs that, instead of leaving them with a good metal experience, it feels like a chore to listen. I really hope they do produce something that's completely new, but given their history, I don't see it. Thank you so much for watching. That was another metal music review. I feel like that one was particularly harsh, but you have to understand, guys, I have to call what I hear. And I do really hope, in all respects, that they try to make something different, but as I said to you, I can't see it. But no, what do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What do you guys think? Please leave us a comment below. Again, if you liked the video, give it a like. And to subscribe for more videos, please give us a subscribe, it would mean a lot. In the meantime, we'll see you again soon with another metal music review. Until then, I've been Dave Cullen. This has been Put the Metal On. Stay safe and enjoy the metal.